At my brother's wedding, I discovered the shocking truth and returned my $5,000 with a heart traumatized by deceit. Jamie stood at her bathroom mirror, adjusting her hair for the third time, an unease gnawing at her insides. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration, the culmination of her younger brother's dreams. But as she pinned back a wayward curl, her mind was consumed by thoughts of their estranged father, who had appeared unannounced at the rehearsal dinner just last night. The man had left them without a word years ago, shattering their family, and now he seemed poised to do it all over again. She took a deep breath, convincing herself that the festivities would distract her from the dark specter of his presence, yet shadows loomed larger than the charming paper lantern strung overhead. With every clang of glasses and burst of laughter echoing from the reception hall, Jamie felt her heart race. She was a nurse, skilled in the demands of chaos, yet today, as she prepared her mother's famous blueberry pie for dessert, she struggled to compartmentalize her turmoil. Instead, memories of debts, hunger, and those frayed family bonds tightened their grip on her chest like a tourniquet. Would their father really try to reclaim a place in their lives when he had walked away so easily? The thought was unbearable. She had pushed for normalcy through her exhausting work shifts and nights spent comforting her mother. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The ceremony began, framed by the gentle sway of Texas oak trees, and every moment brimmed with radiant smiles and heartfelt vows. Jamie felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering dreams of a perfect life that were now buried beneath her responsibilities. Yet amid the glow of joy, there was the insidious whisper of doubt. What was her father plotting? Each laugh around her felt like a knife twisting in her gut, while her brother, blissfully unaware, grinned from ear to ear. The euphoria was stifling. As the reception rolled on, the atmosphere only intensified her feelings of betrayal. Spotting her father whispering too intimately with her brother's in-laws, dread surged through her. What she overheard next shattered her carefully constructed facade. Talk of property, money, and claims on their family home. They were conspiring against her. She felt the sharpness of her pain crystallize, transforming from a dull ache to a searing realization that this sunny day was nothing but a battlefield. Conflicted, Jamie wrestled with her intentions, her righteous anger illuminating the dark corners of her conscience. What good would she be if she allowed this to continue unchallenged? As she prepared to celebrate her brother's love, she faced the stark reality that this moment at the altar was haunted by a past they couldn't outrun. She could feel the weight of the cash gift in her pocket, its worth twisted into a reminder of her father's betrayal. The night seemed endless, and as the lights dimmed and music turned up, Jamie felt an unbearable constriction in her chest. Gripping the microphone felt like grasping at resolution. Heart racing, she prepared herself for the inevitable. "I know we promised not to let the past define us, but the truth deserves a voice," she declared, locking eyes with the man she once called Dad. The room froze, anticipation humming in the air. As she hurled the check onto the table, Jamie knew she had crossed the line. Would this moment of defiance unite them or irreparably fracture the fragile remains of their family? Amidst the shock that rippled through the attendees, Jamie wondered if she could bear the fallout of her revelations, or if the storm she'd ignited would devastate them all. The wedding bells faded, leaving her to ponder a future muddied by the echoes of deceit. The air in the reception hall crackled with tension as Jamie stood rooted in place, her pulse thrumming like a war drum. Her proclamation hung in the silence, heavy and accusing, a challenge thrown down in front of family and friends. She glanced at her brother's confused expression, then back toward her father, whose face was a mask of shock and embarrassment, a world of emotions battling within his eyes. "Jamie, what are you doing?" her brother stammered, his voice a mix of disbelief and desperation. It was an impossible situation. Every head turned toward her, but deep down, she knew that her actions were inevitable. She could no longer hold back the avalanche of feelings she had buried for so long. "Defending our home," she replied, taking a step forward, her voice stronger now, cutting through the stillness. "You walked away from us when we needed you most. You don't get to waltz back in and claim you're part of this family as if nothing happened." Each word felt cathartic, yet terrifying. She was confronting the specter of betrayal that had loomed heavily over their lives, and there was no taking it back. Her father opened his mouth as if to protest, but no words came. Instead, he looked at her as if searching for a way to manipulate her truth, a way to undermine her. But she'd become something he hadn't anticipated, a daughter forged in resilience, scarred yet unbroken. "No more lies," Jamie pressed on, emboldened by her own revelation. "You have no right to claim anything of mine or our family's until you face the consequences of your choices." The audience behind her murmured, some in support, others in shock. It was a moment she had fought for, but hoped wouldn't lead to irreparable division. A flame ignited in Jamie's heart, propelling her toward the reality she had tried to shield herself from. She was not just a nurse anymore. She was a warrior ready to protect her family's legacy. The competitive spirit she had honed, the determination to care for others, had found its voice, and she was ready to wield it. "Look around, Dad," Jamie continued, feeling the rhythm of her words seep into her bones. "I've built a family with my mother's strength. I've cared for those who matter, while you pretended we didn't exist. You can take your claim and walk right back out." There was a resolute power in her stance that astonished even her. The girl who once cowered in the shadow of disappointment had turned into a formidable advocate for her own refuge. The room buzzed with apprehension. Jamie focused only on her brother, who seemed to grapple with the unearthly shift in his reality. Uncertainty read all over his face as he sought a lifeline between the worlds of duty and loyalty. It hurt to witness, but Jamie couldn't falter now, not when the truth was finally being whispered into existence. Her father remained immobile, the storm she had stirred rippling through him. Jamie realized this was only the start of the confrontation she needed to face, not only with her father, but with the entity of the childhood that had harmed her. When the wedding bells faded, it wasn't simply a loss, it was the dawning of a new fight. The strands of obligation that had tethered her to pain were fraying, hinting at newfound resolve. As the echoes of her confrontation settled like a thick fog, Jamie felt a mixture of exhilaration and fear. What did this mean for her brother's wedding day? Would her act of bravery yield the unity she longed for, or deepen the divide? The tantalizing tension of potential outcomes loomed large, urging her to brace for the fallout. Suddenly, the MC resumed, the music swelled, and Jamie felt the weight of eyes upon her. She pondered what tomorrow might hold, aching to chart a path of her design in a family reconstruction she had no map to navigate. Amid the chaos, a startling realization bloomed. She had tasted freedom, and more than ever she desired to reclaim her narrative. The journey ahead threatened peril, yet it beckoned with a promise of empowerment, a prospect she couldn't ignore. What awaited her outside this suffocating hall? She had released the demons and now needed to decide how to forge her future, and whether forgiveness could ever find a place in her heart. The music pulsated through the hall, a stark contrast to Jamie's rapid heartbeat. Breathless and profound uncertainty loomed heavily around her. With the risky move she had just made, an invisible boundary had been crossed, not just before her father, but within herself. This was the tipping point. She was no longer just a caretaker. She was the architect of her own reality. Jamie looked into her brother's eyes, searching for a glimmer of support, but only finding a reflection of confusion and betrayal. His brow was furrowed, splitting loyalty between his father and sister. Her voice fractured the moment's silence. "You don't have to choose sides, but this is a truth we can't ignore anymore." A ripple of unease pervaded the room as she navigated through the horde of conflicted faces. It felt as if each onlooker was weighing her choices, scrutinizing her strength, and questioning the woman's emergence they had long overlooked. She brushed past her father, whose presence turned oppressive, suffocating her burgeoning independence in a way she never anticipated before. Stepping outside onto the balcony, where the night air kissed her skin, Jamie took a deep breath, hoping the coolness would ignite clarity. The stars twinkled above her, indifferent to the personal tempest she had unleashed. What would they think if they could hear her inner thoughts? Did they, too, bear ties that weighed them down? Her nursing career had taught her more than just medical skills. It had taught her resilience, coupled with a fierce desire for justice. Every shift in the COVID unit, battling to keep her patients alive, had awakened a vulnerability within her, making her empathetic but now painfully aware of her limits. "Maybe it's time to put those lessons into practice," she murmured to herself. Healing didn't only encompass physical well-being. Sometimes it was about confronting and rectifying long-standing emotional wounds. Forgiveness had been a stagnant weight in her heart, something she'd need to examine closely. Jamie felt an urge to reclaim not just her narrative, but the chance to redefine her relationships and her world. As thoughts of relocation crossed her mind, the whispers of family obligations clashed with the visions of her potential future. She had anchored herself safely within her mind, making peace with a past that felt forgotten, until now. The fight she had ignited wasn't just for her, but for the legacy her mother had left behind. Resolute, Jamie envisioned charting out every aspiration she'd culled from past grievances. She imagined embracing professional development, moving forward within her career in nursing, or pivoting into a position with a greater focus on advocacy. An opportunity to channel the passion she had once reserved only for her patients into systemic change. Perhaps becoming a nurse practitioner is only the beginning, she contemplated. I can lead initiatives for families battling similar fractures, or become involved in policy reform to advocate for better social services. But she couldn't let that evening slip back into chaos. Her eyes returned to the reception, where laughter erupted, and the hall called her back. She wondered if she would ever stand in front of that family legacy again, not just as a daughter, but as a leader. Summoning newfound courage, she stepped back inside, ready to face the music, literally and figuratively. It was time to articulate the broader vision for her future. "I will strengthen those bonds," she clarified internally, but it also meant she must confront them without fear. And just then, as she caught sight of her brothers speaking with their father, she realized they weren't the only connections that needed repair. Would her decision tonight disrupt the tenuous fabric of their family, or could it pave the way for a deeper understanding? The question resonated through her mind as she took each step forward into uncertainty, seeking to reclaim her narrative while delving into the heart of what made a family truly whole. But as she reached the doorway to the main hall, a figure caught her eye in the shadows. It was someone she hadn't expected to see. Her heart raced as she confronted the return of another ghost from her past. What truth would this encounter unveil? The figure emerged from the shadows, and recognition flooded Jamie's mind like a tidal wave, crashing into her carefully constructed resolve. It was Ava, her childhood friend and confidant, someone she hadn't seen since their paths diverged years ago, neither of them aware of the fissures that would form in the ground between them. The sight of Ava sent a rush of conflicting emotions spiraling within her. Nostalgia for their carefree days, combined with the anxiety of what her appearance might signify. "Ava!" Jamie barely managed to breathe out, disbelief etching lines across her face. "Jamie," Ava replied, hesitant but hopeful. "I didn't think I'd find you here." A flood of memories washed over Jamie, inundating her with the laughter and secrets they once shared. But there was an urgency in Ava's eyes, a determination that intensified Jamie's internal conflict. What did she want? What had changed? I came to speak with your brother, actually, Ava said softly, her voice steady though laced with unspoken implications. But this feels like serendipity. Jamie took a step back, recalibrating her stance. Serendipity or not, I'm still trying to figure out who I am in this moment, she confessed, the weight of her emotional journey pressing heavily on her chest. Ava looked taken aback, but her expression softened. You've grown into someone who doesn't need to hide. I saw what you did in there. It took courage to speak your truth. You know how much I hate conflict. Jamie felt a lump form in her throat. But maybe I'm learning that it's necessary for growth. Or it's the first step to healing, Ava countered. The vulnerability in her tone surprised Jamie. It felt as if Ava had not just been a witness to her struggles, but perhaps had faced her own demons. I've been through my own challenges since we last spoke, Jamie. I'm back because I want to find a common ground. The connection sparked a flicker of hope in Jamie's heart. What have you been doing? She asked, curiosity mingling with apprehension. I've been working in advocacy, Ava revealed, her eyes lighting up for a moment. I've started a program for mental health awareness. It's something I wish I'd had when we were younger. Jamie's heart raced with the prospect of shared passions piecing together their fractured friendship. That sounds incredible. But I'm also back to face some unfinished business, Ava said quietly. It's about your brother. The mention of her brother made Jamie's stomach drop. Would her reunion with Ava corrode the fragile connection she was just beginning to stabilize? Had Ava returned simply to stir up the past? Why? Jamie demanded softly, her brow furrowed. Did something happen? We need to talk, Jamie. I don't want to do this here, but it can't wait. Ava's tone turned serious, her urgency palpable. Jamie nodded, her internal resolve resuming its previous zeal. Let's find a place to talk, she said, steeling herself. What if this conversation was the key to understanding everything that felt so unmoored? The fraying thread of her family, her aspirations, and her past. As they made their way through the bustling reception, Jamie felt a surge of defiance. She would no longer be swept up by circumstances. This was her narrative to command. The evening had morphed, and rather than a simple reunion, it promised a confrontation. Ava held the answers, and Jamie sensed that whatever they unearthed would demand confrontation, not just with their families, but with themselves. The gravity of what lay ahead wasn't lost on her. Would this discussion lead to a resolution, or would it open doors to more disarray? Just as they reached a quiet corner away from prying eyes, Jamie caught a glimpse of her brother across the hall, speaking animatedly with their father. Her heart raced. The threads of family entanglements tightened around her, a reminder of the delicate balance she had begun to weave. What truth would Ava lay bare? And could Jamie summon the resilience she had once found in the COVID unit to navigate the tumultuous emotional landscape of her past? As the weight of uncertainty hung in the air, Jamie realized this moment might redefine not only her relationship with Ava, but also the fabric of her entire family. And just then, a flash of urgency ignited within her. What if the truth Ava was about to reveal could fracture her remaining bonds, and, perhaps, offer the missing piece to the puzzle of her own identity? Jamie drew a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities as she turned back to Ava. The clamoring sounds of the reception faded into a dull murmur, allowing the urgency of their situation to crystallize around them. This was no longer just an encounter with a friend. It was a reckoning with the past. Okay, Ava, she began, steeling herself for whatever might come next. What's going on with my brother? Ava glanced around, ensuring their privacy. It's complicated. Your brother has been struggling, hidden behind his usual bravado. I watched him spiral during the past few months, and it concerns me deeply. Jamie's heart sank. Despite her efforts to bridge the gap between her brother and her growing aspirations, she couldn't shake the fear that he might be losing ground. I knew he seemed off lately, but why didn't he reach out for help? Why did it take you to come back for me to realize something was wrong? It's hard for him to open up, even to you, Ava replied, her voice thick with compassion. It was easier for him to retreat than face what he was feeling. especially with the pressures of the family. Something clicked inside Jamie, an unsettling realization that the grasp her family had on each other was both a lifeline and a bandage over furious, festering wounds. But how could she confront the truth without tearing the fragile stitches of their bond even further? So, what do? How can I help him? He needs to know he's not alone. We need to approach this together. But Jamie, Ava hesitated, the weight of her next words palpable. You have to be ready to face not only your brother's reality, but also the impact it'll have on you. There are truths we all need to confront together. Jamie felt a rush of adrenaline, juxtaposed with mounting apprehension. As she grappled with the enormity of their conversation, she sensed the shadows of her past creeping in. She'd spent so long working to reconcile her insecurities and fears, only to find herself on the brink of reclaiming that tumult once more. But what if it pushes him further away? Jamie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if opening up doesn't mean healing? We can't control how he reacts, but we can create a safe space for him, Ava replied, her tone steady and resolute. Let him know he's valued. Let your family see that vulnerability doesn't equate to weakness. If you can embrace your own challenges and seek support, maybe there's a chance for him to feel empowered to do the same. Jamie's mind raced, ideas colliding and coalescing into a strategy. What if we invite him to have a real family talk? Not just small talk about everything else, but something deeper. We all need to be honest. Exactly. It might just open the door for collaboration instead of conflict, Ava encouraged, her eyes shimmering with understanding. You have a lot more power in this than you think. Something shifted within Jamie as she processed Ava's words. It was almost as if a thread of connection had reknitted itself. She had a voice in this. She could craft a new narrative for her family, one that didn't shy away from confrontation, but instead embraced it for healing. The thought lit a fire in her veins, but as resolve settled in, doubt crept in. Would this confrontation be a step towards unearthing buried truths, or would it cast shadows over the fragile layers of connection she had begun to build? As she stood with Ava, expectation coiling in the air, Jamie felt the oncoming storm. Revelations. She sensed this was more than just the next conversation. It was a pivotal moment that could redefine her as a protector, a sister, and an advocate within her own family. But amid the dawning awareness of her potential was a lingering fear. What if, in navigating the emotional landscape of her brother's turmoil, she inadvertently lost sight of her own aspirations? Jamie glanced back toward the throng of guests, where her brother was still conversing with their father. The future loomed ahead, heavy with uncertainty, but she knew she had to push forward. And what awaited them on the other side of that conversation? It felt like a reckoning, one that could set the course for everything she thought she understood about family, support, and herself. What's next? Can we confront him tonight? Ava's voice broke through her thoughts, refocusing Jamie on the present. A surge of determination sparked within her. She would face it all tonight. And as she took a step toward that uncertain future, she realized this could either mend the rifts within her family or become a catalyst for more profound changes. With conviction, Jamie nodded. Yes, it's time we all face the truth. As the weight of her decision settled heavily on her shoulders, she also felt a flicker of excitement for the potential shift in narrative. But even as hope glimmered within, uncertainty raged like a thunderstorm on the horizon, amplifying her unease. What truths remained buried that could come crashing to the surface? Jamie braced herself, knowing her next steps would guide not just her journey, but the fate of her family as well. Jamie felt a wave of adrenaline coursing through her as she prepared to approach her brother. With each step, the cacophony of celebratory chatter faded further into a distant hum, replaced by the focused rhythm of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The crowd parted for her, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were consumed by the weight of responsibility she was about to shoulder. Ava stood nearby, watching with a supportive presence that gave Jamie just enough courage to forge ahead. She had always been the steady hand in Jamie's life, a reminder that not all connections had to be fraught with chaos. This was their moment, a chance to bridge chasms that had grown deeper over time. "Hey, can we talk?" she heard herself say, her voice more resolute than she felt inside. The casualness of the gathering around them juxtaposed starkly with the gravity of what she was about to discuss. Her brother looked up, surprise evident on his face. "Sure, what's up?" He gestured them away from the main area to a quieter corner, still somewhat oblivious to the depth of the conversation awaiting him. As they relocated, Jamie felt the pull of the moment intensifying. Her heart pounded, not out of fear, but from the realization that this was about more than just her brother's struggles. This was about her reclaiming her voice within the family. It was a defining moment, and she was determined to navigate it with clarity. "Listen, I've been talking to Ava," she started, her voice steady despite the tumult inside her. "And I think it's important we have an honest conversation. It's about how you've been." He shifted slightly, discomfort flashing across his features. For a fleeting moment, Jamie hesitated. Was she pushing too hard? But the look in his eyes drove her on. She had spent years tiptoeing around his feelings, avoiding confrontation at the cost of her own needs. This was different. This time, she wouldn't shy away. "Jamie, I'm fine, really." His dismissal was almost instinctive, a protective barrier he'd erected against probing questions. It frustrated her, but this wasn't just about her frustration. It was about the hidden depths of love and concern beneath it all. "No, you're not," she countered, her voice rising slightly as her conviction strengthened. "I've seen it. I've seen you hiding behind that facade. You don't have to pretend with me. I want to help." For a moment, silence reigned. It was as if the ambient noise of the reception had faded away, leaving only the two of them and the audible echo of vulnerability hanging in the air. "Help?" he scoffed. "What do you know about help? You're the one who moved away, chasing some dream. You left us behind." His words struck Jamie like a slap, and she shifted her weight in response to the sharpness of his accusation. A wave of self-doubt rolled over her. "I came back because I care," she finally replied, her voice taut with suppressed emotion. "I've been trying to do what's best for us for years. Maybe if you let me in, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Her brother's expression flickered, revealing the unease behind his tough exterior. Perhaps he hadn't expected her to push back. Maybe he thought he could simply retreat into the shadows of denial. But she wasn't willing to let that happen anymore. "What if we opened up about what's really affecting us?" she suggested, the urgency in her voice evident. "What if we held space for each other to be vulnerable?" Those words hung in the air, like a lifeline she was throwing out, hoping he might grab it. But would he? Jamie felt a swell of anxiety as she awaited his response, that familiar desire for acceptance and recognition pushing her forward. "Maybe you're right," he finally said, his voice quieter, almost defeated. "But it's not going to be easy. I don't even know where to start." Her heart pounded, both relieved at his openness and anxious about where this path might lead. "Then let's start together. We can unpack this one step at a time." The vulnerability between them throbbed with unspoken possibility. Yet, in that moment of connection, Jamie felt something else lurking beneath the surface, a gnawing anxiety about the paths their conversation might take, the hidden truths they might unveil. As they stood facing one another, Jamie realized the defining moment of her life was unfolding. She was no longer the passive observer. She was ready to delve into the depths of familial truth. But with that readiness came fear. What new wounds would emerge during their journey toward healing? As Jamie took a breath, bracing herself for the storm that might ensue, she sensed the impending release of truths long buried, and the possibility that everything they thought they knew about their family could be rewritten. What awaited them as they ventured deeper into the truth? Jamie squeezed her brother's hand, feeling a mix of dread and anticipation. It was time, not just to discover what lay beneath the surface, but to confront it head-on. Jamie's brother sighed deeply, almost as if the weight of the world had settled on his shoulders in that brief moment of silence. She could see the vulnerability etched into the lines of his face. Years of repressed feelings seemed to linger in the spaces between them, just waiting for a chance to surface. She squeezed his hand tighter, anchoring both of them in this newfound commitment to openness. "Okay," he finally released, his voice taut like a stretched rubber band ready to snap. "What do you want to know? Because I have a lot I've kept bottled up, and I don't think I can just start spilling." The tension flickered, and for the first time, Jamie felt an edge of hope, buoyed by the idea that perhaps he wanted to share his truth as much as she needed to hear it. "Start wherever you feel comfortable," she urged softly, glancing at Ava in the distance, who offered her a compassionate smile. With a reluctant nod, her brother exhaled heavily. "Fine, I guess. It's about being the middle child. I know it sounds silly, but I've always felt invisible. You left for bigger things while I stayed behind, but it's as if no one sees me, not even Mom and Dad." His words poured out, raw and unfiltered. Each sentence felt like a release, and Jamie began to see their family dynamics anew. The more he spoke, the clearer it became, how deeply she had misread their interactions over the years. The feelings of inadequacy she believed had plagued her brother were woven into the very fabric of their childhood, stemming from a landscape of competition for validation. "That's not what I want for you," she admitted, her heart aching at the realization of just how long they had avoided their truths. "You've always mattered. I thought I was chasing dreams, but I didn't recognize you were left behind to carry this burden alone." He looked up at her, and the tension in his jaw relaxed just a fraction. "You know, part of me resented you for being so much more." He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Successful, I guess, while I struggled to keep it together." This admission struck her hard. It wasn't just his emotional wall she had wanted to dismantle, it was also the realization that her own journey had been shrouded in misunderstandings. She had imagined he was safe and secure in their shared home, but he had been wrestling with loneliness and feelings of inadequacy all along. "Success isn't just about career achievements, though," she said, feeling an urgency to reshape the narrative between them. "From where I stand, you've always been brave, just in different ways. It's time you saw that, just like it took me time to realize that my life choices could have affected you." He blinked, uncertainty etched across his face. "But you really think I'm brave?" "Yes, you've steadied the ship while I've chased dreams. I'm here to acknowledge the courage you displayed while I was away, and we can redefine our connection. Your feelings are valid, and they deserve to be heard." As she spoke, Jamie felt a wave of clarity wash over her. This connection with her brother was not just about him healing. It was about her learning how to step into the light she had often overlooked. For a moment, he was silent. Then he spoke, and the weight of resolve filled his words. "I want to believe that, but it's scary." "I know," Jamie replied. "Change is always frightening, but necessary. And it starts now, doesn't it? We're in this together." A quiet determination began to take root in her heart as they confronted the past and its lingering grip on their relationship. She didn't know where this conversation would lead, but every step felt like a moment of liberation. Yet, amid the exchange, Jamie could feel the symphony of emotions swirling around them, a reminder that confronting family issues was never simply resolved in one conversation. "I want to tell you something else," he said, breaking through her thoughts. She caught her breath, anticipation pulling tight inside her chest as she braced herself for whatever he had to say next. What revelation would challenge everything she thought she understood about him and their family? She had uncovered one layer, but could the next be the catalyst for deeper understanding? "What is it?" Jamie prompted, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. The weight of the unspoken truths was palpable, charging the atmosphere between them with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Her brother stared at the ground, wrestling with whatever was brewing inside him. "I felt trapped in a loop," he began, finally lifting his gaze to meet hers. "You think I've just been sitting here waiting for you to come back and see how hard it is for me? But I've been trying to figure out who I am too. The more I watched you chase your ambitions, the more I realized I suck at everything. I mean, I thought maybe I'd be the one to redefine family success, but I just ended up being the leftover afterthought. His raw honesty sent a shockwave through Jamie, igniting a mixture of sympathy and guilt. She understood now that his sense of invisibility stemmed not only from her success, but also from an unfulfilled potential he felt slipping away. "Have you ever thought about what you truly want?" she asked, drawing closer to this pivotal moment of understanding. "Of course I think about it." He clenched his fists, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "I want to be more than just the middle child who only gets attention when something goes wrong. But every time I try something new, I fail. I work dead-end jobs, I have no meaningful relationships, and I don't know how to start over." Jamie studied his face, searching for the brother she knew amidst the anger and despair. Starting over doesn't mean erasing your past. It means recognizing your worth in the present. You are so much more than those failures. They don't define you. You've just got to find what you're passionate about. Was that the key she had overlooked? Passion with a catalyst for growth, and perhaps it was the same spark that had ignited her own journey. But how could she illuminate that path for him? "I've been so focused on my own journey that I forgot you might be lost in your own way," she admitted, her voice steady but softening. "Let's carve out some time, together, to uncover what drives you. It's never too late to discover your passion." He looked at her, uncertainty replaced by a glimmer of curiosity. "What if I realize I really am not good at anything?" "Then we'll figure it out together," she replied, the conviction palpable in her tone. "No strings attached, just exploration." A moment of silence hung between them like a fragile thread, and then he nodded, albeit cautiously. "Okay, maybe I can give that a shot." The tension that had knitted them together in recent days began to unravel, but Jamie could sense another shift lurking beneath the surface. There was more he wasn't saying. She could feel it like a magnetic pull, urging her to dig deeper. As they sat in contemplative silence, gauging the burgeoning hope in their conversation, Jamie made a realization. Embracing each other's realities wasn't enough. They needed action. If her brother was serious about rediscovering himself, they'd have to set a plan into motion. "Let's meet once a week and try something new together," she suggested. "We can take a class, join a group, or even volunteer. If we stumble, we can laugh about it later. No expectations, just authentic experiences." He chuckled softly. "You're really going to force me into new things, huh?" "Yes, I am. But I'll be right there alongside you. No judgment, just encouragement." Her declaration hung in the air, a promise of solidarity. Yet beneath it lay a hint of confrontation, an urge to confront their familial roles more directly. How would they navigate the tangled history of their upbringing as they moved forward into this new chapter? "What about Mom and Dad?" he asked, a shadow crossing his features. "If I break out of this mold, how will they react?" The challenge loomed larger than before. Could they truly break free from the past if they continued to live under the same expectations that had shaped them? Jamie felt the walls close in. It was time to face not just their own truths, but the looming family dynamics that had held them captive for far too long. "Maybe we can start by talking to them too," Jamie offered, vulnerability edging into her voice. "It might not be easy, but pursuing our happiness can provide a new narrative for them as well." Her brother's eyes sparkled with both fear and excitement, signaling the shift that could change everything. They were on the verge of a breakthrough, not just in their lives, but perhaps for their entire family. But the question lingered: how would their parents react to this new definition of success? The thought sent a chill down Jamie's spine, but she knew there was no turning back now. They had to face the truth. The pursuit of personal growth was one thing, but the potential fallout seemed imminent, and so began the real test of their commitment to change. As Jamie walked away from their conversation, the lingering weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on her shoulders. She looked out the window, watching the golden sunlight flicker through the leaves, a reminder of the vibrancy she yearned to cultivate, both in her life and her brother's. They had committed to this new venture together, but how to lead someone else towards self-discovery when she was still navigating her own path? The echo of his words, "What if I realize I really am not good at anything?" haunted Jamie, surfacing her own fears of inadequacy. Was it arrogant for her to believe she could help him find his footing when she herself occasionally stumbled in her professional life? She had faced challenges, sure, but she was overcoming them. Perhaps the journey would demand more courage than she assumed. In the days following their conversation, Jamie devised a plan. She enrolled in a pottery class, convinced the tactile, creative experience would reignite her own sense of passion. The idea of shaping something substantial from raw clay thrilled her. Wasn't that the essence of her journey too? To mold her identity into something more fulfilling. As she prepared for the first class, Jamie reflected on her potential influence over her brother. Maybe engaging in shared activities would open his heart to new possibilities. When the day arrived, Jamie arrived early, eager yet apprehensive. As she molded the clay for the first time, she felt the tension in her shoulders relinquish with each squish of the wet earth. This was not just about creating, it was about experimentation and failure, discovering beauty in imperfection. She imagined her brother sitting beside her, laughing off the inevitable messes they would make. It was liberating. Finally, after a few sessions, it was time to invite him. She picked up the phone, excitement bubbling within her, and dialed. He answered, his voice wavering slightly as Jamie pitched the idea of pottery. "I don't know if that's really my thing, Jamie," he replied, hesitation rolling through the words. "I mean, isn't that for artistic types?" Exactly! It is for artistic types, with a capital A. And we're doing this together. If it flops, we'll laugh about it. No expectations. Just making things out of mud. There was a pause on the other end. "I'll drive." Boom. "You only have to get in the car." "That's okay, I guess?" His reluctant agreement was a small victory for Jamie. It felt life-affirming to push him beyond his comfort zone, yet nagging doubts crept in. What if he experienced this as another failure? While they sat in the classroom, surrounded by others, Jamie watched her brother struggle with the wheel. She could see the tension in his brows, the way his mouth formed a tight line as he fought to create. Yet disappointment was not an option today. This was supposed to be fun. "Hey," she whispered, "remember, we can make the worst mug and still drink from it, right?" He chuckled for the first time, and the spark ignited again. As the weeks progressed, pottery transformed from a daunting task into a bonding experience. They unreservedly supported one another. Jamie learned about her own perseverance as she molded her pieces with increasing skill, while her brother discovered an interesting aptitude for design, his eyes lighting up with the vibrancy he had so long concealed. Yet, beneath the surface of creativity, Jamie sensed their deeper issues simmering. They still needed to confront their parents. These excursions could not suffocate the cameras aimed at their traditional identities. The pressure was building, pushing for a release. The fear of their family's disapproval lingered like a specter in the corner of her mind. One evening, after a particularly raucous class, Jamie sat in her car, rationale spiraling into dread. The weight of their childhood choices hung over her like a thick fog. But then she recalled a constant image that accompanied her work at the pottery wheel, the unyielding commitment to shaping her art. As she turned the ignition, steeling herself for conversations yet to unfold, the decision solidified. It was time to face her parents, confront their perceptions of success, and reshape the narrative they had been trapped in for far too long. Would they understand the shift she and her brother were experiencing, or would it ignite strife? The thought heightened her sense of urgency, propelling her toward the uncharted territory ahead. The moment loomed, the turning point for their family destiny standing just beyond the horizon. Yet the who of it echoed back. Would the revelation of their new ambitions connect them or push them further apart? As Jamie drove toward the inevitable confrontation, the questions multiplied. Was she truly ready to redefine what family success looked like?
Stakes felt impossibly high, but there was no turning back now. Jamie stood before her parents' house, their childhood home, the very place where echoes of laughter mingled with memories of tension and misunderstanding. The journey had been arduous, one filled with struggles, revelations, and growth. She felt a potent sense of resolve coursing through her veins. Today was about more than just a conversation. It was a pathway to closure, rebirth, and not only for herself, but for her brother as well. After the earlier discussions with her brother, Jamie had developed a renewed sense of courage and a clear understanding of the change they both desperately needed. She had made progress in her own life, but returning to her family dynamics demanded more than mere transformations in their individual lives. It would necessitate challenging the very foundations that had governed their interactions for years. As she met her brother outside, there was a glimmer of understanding in his eyes that heightened her anticipation. Together, they entered, bracing themselves for the inevitable confrontation. The familiar scent of home wafted through the air, and settled tension uncoiled in Jamie's chest. A reminder of every family gathering that had felt too heavy with unsaid words. Their parents greeted them with warm smiles, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Jamie could feel her heart thrum in rhythm with a newfound purpose as they sat down together. "Mom, Dad," she began, her voice even and steady. "We need to talk about the future, not just our individual futures, but what family means to us moving forward." The discomfort in the room was palpable. Her father immediately stiffened, the shield of familial expectation taking form around him. "What's wrong? Is this about your brother?" he queried, his voice edged with concern and irritation. "No, Dad, it's not just about him, it's about us all," Jamie pressed on, emboldened. "We need to redefine what success looks like for each of us. I've found a way to integrate my passions, and I see how important it is for us all to be honest about our struggles and aspirations, together." The resistance melted into surprise. Her mother's eyes softened as she sensed the weight of desperation mingling with earnest vulnerability. With every word Jamie spoke, she could see the internal gears turning in her parents' minds, challenging norms they had long upheld. "Jamie, I think you're being overly dramatic again," her father remarked dismissively, bridging his brows with doubt. "You don't understand the sacrifices we made for you kids." The familiar retort made her leap into action. "That's exactly my point, Dad. I didn't know you felt the pressure either, but those sacrifices carried a burden. We can inhabit our lives without feeling like we're just living for others. We must embrace our truths, our pains, and our victories as a family." A tight silence ensued, but this time it was filled with reflection rather than resistance. Now was the moment Jamie needed to seize. "Connor is pursuing
his own passions. I have mine. And I want to make a life where we support each other, not just around achievements, but through our very existence. This isn't a personal failure. It's an opportunity for connection." With a quiet breakthrough at hand, Jamie's brother chimed in. "I want to explore what drives me, not just live in the shadows of what I see as your accomplishments. This isn't just Jamie's issue, it's ours." Her parents exchanged glances, the revelations landing like lead weights. Their expectations had morphed the realities of their children, draining the essence of joy from their lives. Jamie felt a sense of liberation roll over her as her brother and her parents absorbed the impact of their shared truths. Minutes passed like hours as silence lingered in the air, but it was weighted softly, inviting clarity. Jamie could see that her parents' expressions were shifting from disbelief to contemplation. They began acknowledging the possibility of participating in this newfound narrative, one woven with threads of open communication. "Maybe we have focused too much on what our idea of success is," her mother conceded slowly, her voice pulsing with an authenticity Jamie had longed to hear. "We need to redefine our roles together, about how we support one another." A wave of gratitude flooded over Jamie, yet the journey was far from over. Was this newfound resolution enough to sustain a healthy evolution of their family dynamics? Let's start by sharing at least one thing we're passionate about, Jamie proposed, leaning in to grasp this budding moment of unity, not as parents and children, but as individual people. This could open a new chapter for us all. One by one, they began to share. Her father with a hidden yearning for painting, her mother's desire to travel, and finally, her brother's dreams of pursuing environmental studies. Each revelation added layers to the once thin layer of connection that separated them, solidifying newfound understanding. As the conversations paved pathways of honesty and acceptance, Jamie felt a profound sense of achievement. She had not just confronted her past, she had reclaimed her narrative and shifted the dynamic of her family. The relationship with her brother blossomed not only under the weight of reconciliation, but cultivated mutual support, a structure she had spent too long yearning for. Standing at the end of this exhausting yet fulfilling journey, Jamie beamed from within, feeling a powerful surge of confidence, emboldened by recognition. She could now walk bravely into the professional world to advocate for others, take strides toward her aspirations, and embrace unresolved feelings, guiding her family towards healing. What awaited her next? Jamie took a deep breath, ready to embrace every challenge, each truth waiting to unfurl. The personal transformation she had achieved was undeniably profound, grounding her as the architect of her and her family's narrative. As she felt the air thrum with applause for her own progress, there was only one conclusion. Here and now was the moment to ensure that the lesson learned would not fade away. She would continue the advocacy she sought, not just within walls of her profession, but as a devoted daughter and sister whose voice could reshape their family legacy. This was her achievement, an undying pursuit of resolution, and it was only the beginning. If you resonate with Jamie's journey of growth and self-discovery, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss the upcoming exclusive emotional stories that could inspire your own transformation. Leave a like now to fuel the journey of others healing through personal narratives. Your support makes all the difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about this transformative conclusion. Your voice matters in these discussions. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful resolution. They might not just enjoy it, they might transform into advocates of their own narratives.